So recently, there was a viral post on the Football Manager Reddit, and Zealand also replicated this experiment where the user made a bunch of players on one team that looked exactly like this, what they called the 9 meta attributes that we see here, having 20, as well as a couple attributes with 13. And they found that a team that looks exactly like this won the Premier League. The other thing they found was that they created a team that looked exactly like this, with meh physicals but really awesome technicals and mentals, and they found that this team got relegated from the Premier League. So I want to talk about this experiment, explain why I think it was flawed, and create a new experiment to better test the mechanics of the match engine. So first, let's talk about the experiment with this player profile. So they created a team of players with 20s and the 9 meta attributes and found that that team did very well. So they found this to be really surprising. And I think there are two reasons for this being surprising. The first is that people really don't realize how not bad a one attribute is. And I think people don't realize how good a 20 attribute is. So let's talk about that. The first thing that I want to talk about is that a lot of the comments were saying that essentially you had created a player who couldn't kick a ball, but this isn't true. A one attribute doesn't mean they can't kick a ball. And to talk about that, we have an example here. Virgil van Dijk has a corner taking attribute of 3. That is very close to 1. But I guarantee you, if you put Virgil van Dijk in a team of Sunday League footballers, he could take a corner better than anyone on that team. And then similarly, as another example, I've just looked up players with a finishing attribute of 1 here. So this is a bunch of players in game who have a finishing attribute of 1. But these are all still professional footballers. Like if we just click on a random player here, this person plays for Tamworth in the Vanarama National League North. And we can keep going down and we find all these players with attributes of 1 that are professional footballers. They can still finish. If they walked into a Sunday League football side, they would be better than most players. So what I'm trying to say here is that having an attribute of 1 isn't indicative of the absence of that attribute. Just because you're finishing as 1 doesn't mean you can't kick a ball or you could never score. It just means you're not as good as other professional footballers. The other thing I don't think people realize is like how amazing having an attribute of 20 is. Like this literally makes you the best dribbler in the world, the most acceleration, the highest pace, and the best strength. You could design, if you had a team of these players, you could easily design a tactic to take advantage of these things. And with a dribbling of 20, a pace of 20, and a strength of 20, this player would literally never lose the ball because they're that fast and that physically imposing. So I don't think people realize like how amazing a team of 11 players would look like with this attribute. I don't think it's super surprising, even given all the other attributes being 1, that they were very good in the league because they would be so dominant physically. If you ever played like a match, like football in real life, people who are like this player would have the height of and jumping reach of Peter Crouch with the strength and pace of Adama Traore and Kylian Mbappe. They would very much be better than everyone else on the pitch, even if they weren't so great technically. That dribbling attribute makes a big difference too. I'm not surprised that this has occurred. And on the flip side, it was surprising to see the technical player do bad, but I'm also not surprised at this. They're very underwhelming physically at a Premier League level. If we look at this player, this kind of reminds you of someone like Andres Iniesta. Like this might be what Andres Iniesta looks like very close to now. Someone like Paul Scholes or even Andrea Pirlo. If you had 11 Paul Scholeses or Andrea Pirlos in a team, they would not do well because they would be physically overpowered. This is essentially very similar to what this player is, so it's not surprising that 11 of them wouldn't do very well. But the biggest fallacy with with this experiment is it's not realistic at all. It doesn't, there's no player like this that even really exists. Nevertheless, 11 of them on the same pitch at the same time. You can't make an immersion breaking experiment where you had to use the editor to create something that's immersion breaking and then complain when you have immersion breaking results. This is a very unrealistic situation. So to better this experiment, we need to do something that isn't as immersion breaking to truly test what something like this looks like in the match engine. So rather than creating a whole team, which doesn't make sense, and of course that's going to be something that's immersion breaking, because it could never happen in the game isn't dealt to deal with that kind of thing. So instead, we're going to create 6 players, one for defenders, one for midfielders, and one for strikers. And we're creating those metaphysical players. So we're creating one center back, we're creating one center mid, and we're creating one forward. And we're going to see how good they actually are in the match engine, not as a team, but as individuals. And we're going to do the same thing with the technical players. Because just because a team of these players wouldn't work, Andrea Pirlo, Paul Scholes, and Andres Iniesta were really good in a side with other players around them. So if what the person in the Reddit post was saying is actually true, these 3 metaphysical players should still be absolutely amazing and should outperform the technical players. That is essentially what is happening in that post. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think the technical players will still end up being better. So what we've done here is we've put all 6 of these players in the Vanarama National League. So they're all going to be playing at the same level, and we put them in the Vanarama National League because that's pretty much where this type of player's ability is. So we will have one season where they're all in the same league, and I'm willing to bet the technical players will do better because they have 10 other players around them who will allow them to be better. And the physical players, they're going to do well because we've shown that the perfect physical player does well in this environment. But I still think the technical players are going to have higher match ratings. And then we're going to simulate 10 seasons in total. And I'm willing to bet the technical players end up doing better throughout the course of their career. So this is what our test is going to be. I think this is a better test than creating a whole team of these players because this is more indicative of what actually happens in game, what would actually happen in real life, and how this would potentially affect your playing of the game. So let's simulate for one season and let's see how each of our 6 players are doing after that. Welcome back. We are 1 year into the future. We're already seeing who the game values more. The technicals are at English Premier Division clubs. But last season, let's see how each player did in the Vanarama National League. So let's start with our physical players. So our striker, unsurprisingly, 22 goals, a 6.93 overall rating. Not a very good average rating. Yeah, they scored a lot of goals. They didn't have a very good average rating. That's not game breaking in any way. Metaphysicals for our central defender, pretty average. 6.83 overall rating. And our center mid, actually pretty good. 7.09 overall rating. That's not bad. So they were okay. They were no different than most other players in their league. Now let's look at the technical players. How did our technical striker do? Much better. 7.35 overall rating, 36 goals and 13 assists. Yeah, that's not surprising that they're doing so much better. 7.5 overall rating here. And again, this is all in the Vanarama National League. They're all in the same league. The technical players unsurprisingly did a lot better because this is more realistic and is much more likely what would happen in both real life and in game. Again, you can't make an immersion breaking experiment and complain when it breaks immersion. This is what would be more likely. And these metaphysical attributes aren't overpowered. They're not overpowered for a single player. We're seeing that here. Football Manager does, in fact, value their technical attributes. So with that in mind, now I'm going to simulate to the end of the season. Maybe they'll end up doing better, but they're in different leagues now. If these technical players have better average ratings in the Premier Division than they're having in the Vanarama National League, I think that's going to say a lot too. So let's go forward to the end of the experiment. We're going actually 5 years into the future. I think I might have said 10, but we're only going 5 years into the future. Let's see where we've ended up then. Welcome back. We've actually lost one of our meta players, but again, that's kind of indicative that the game doesn't value that player as highly as the others. But let's see how our striker and center mid did with these meta attributes. And he did really good. Like this striker for this level did really well. I'm not surprised given how overpowered physically is, but those average ratings are average. Going to our center mid, he was pretty good actually. For this level, actually, this center mid was fantastic. Again, pretty good average ratings, but they're all coming in the low sevens. How did our technicals player do? Yeah, he's having the same, even better average ratings in the Premier Division. I'm not surprised here. Unsurprisingly, they've done well. Like, this is a striker who has done really well. Technical center back has been phenomenal with amazing average ratings, better than the other end. And the center mid, unsurprisingly, has been the best. So, what does this experiment tell us? First of all, it shows us how important attributes are for positions. A player like this, who isn't physically as good but is technically amazing, our center mid had the highest attributes. That isn't surprising that they were the best of everyone else technically in the experiment because this is what an amazing center mid looks like. You don't need to be as physically strong because you're not in as many physical battles, but the technicals and mentals are so important. That's why if you looked at this player, you would think, oh, this is a great attacking mid, deep lying playmaker, advanced playmaker, because this is what that profile of player looks like. The technical center back did well too, but didn't do quite as well. But if you paired this person alongside someone who was physically imposing, they could do really well. And on the flip side, the technical striker did the worst because chance creation is a lot of it is built around physical attributes. So it's unsurprising that they still had good attributes. This would be a great deep lying forward, but maybe not as good of as advanced forward. And what we're seeing here is that the physicals are important. The physicals can, like really good physicals, can be good for kind of hiding poor technical and mental attributes, just like as it would in real life. But in no way was this game breaking. They weren't breaking the game in the way that 11 players like that would do. So again, I think this is a more realistic experiment. We haven't created a whole team, so we're not doing anything that's quote unquote breaking immersion. And we've kind of found what we expected to find. A player who technically looks like this will in fact make it further in the game and still do better in the match engine than someone who looks like this. But we've also learned some things here. Just as Zealand said, attributes are complementary, but attributes are also important on the positions. Technical center mid is going to be a lot better, it's like someone who looks like this, than a forward, and that's true to real life. Someone like Paul Scholes wouldn't have made a great forward or even really a great center back, but he was a great defensive center mid, attacking center mid, because those are the attributes that are important for that. Yes, if you made a whole team that looks like this, they're not going to do good. But if you made a whole team of Paul Scholeses, they're not going to be fantastic either. On the flip side, of course, this is going to be game breaking if there are 11 of them on the field. Because if you had literally the 11 fastest, strongest, tallest people in the world, yeah, they're going to be amazing. But that's not how the game works. There's only one of them usually on the pitch. And sure enough, he was good, but he wasn't game breaking. So that is everything that I have for this experiment. Are technical attributes undervalued? No, because they still work in the game. Are physical attributes overpowered? Yeah, probably a little bit, but not to the extent that I think the original experiment showed. I thought the reaction to that Reddit post in Zealand's video was interesting, but I thought a lot of it was flawed, and I wanted to talk about that. But if you all have any ideas or you all have anything that you think like that doesn't make sense, let me know because I think it's interesting to talk about these things, but don't let it hurt your love for the game. If you enjoy playing Football Manager, don't look for things that make you dislike it because that takes the fun out of the game. So that's all I've got. I think the match engine's fine. It has its flaws, but overall, I think it's fine. I think it works. I think it makes the game fun. Don't go looking for things that are going to break your immersion in the game because then what's the point of having fun playing Football Manager? It's a single player game. It's meant to be fun. If you're not enjoying it, then there's no point in playing it. Anyways, that's me just waffling on. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll see you all in a new one soon. Bye.